The gym went dead silent. Harper's cruel laughter died in her throat as the heavy oak doors swung open. Chloe stood there, clad not in the degrading plastic trash bag they'd forced upon her, but draped in shadows, and silk resting her hand on the arm of a terrifyingly beautiful billionaire. Oak Ridge Academy was a sprawling, ivy-choked fortress in Connecticut, built for the heirs of politicians, hedge fund managers, and tech tycoons. For Chloe Evans, a scholarship student who lived in a cramped two-bedroom apartment above a noisy bakery on the wrong side of the city, Oak Ridge was supposed to be a golden ticket to a better college. Instead, it was a daily exercise in survival. Chloe kept her head down, got perfect grades, and tried desperately to remain invisible. But invisibility is a luxury when you catch the eye of the school's golden boy. Tyler Hayes had the kind of effortless, sun-kissed charm that made people forget he was utterly hollow inside. He was the star quarterback, the heir to a commercial real estate empire, and the long-time, on-again, off-again boyfriend of Harper Bennett. Harper was Oak Ridge's undisputed queen bee, a girl whose beauty was only matched by her profound, venomous cruelty. When Tyler had publicly broken up with Harper a month before the senior prom, the entire school held its breath. When Tyler approached Chloe at her locker, a week later, asking her to be his date with a shy, seemingly genuine smile, Chloe thought she was dreaming. "I'm tired of the drama," Chloe Tyler had told her, leaning against the cold metal lockers, his blue eyes earnest. "I just want to go with someone real. Someone who doesn't care about the status games." Against her better judgment, and ignoring the warning bells ringing in her head, Chloe said yes. For 3 weeks she lived in a strange, fragile fairy tale. Tyler carried her books, texted her good night, and defended her when Harper's inner circle glared at them in the cafeteria. To prepare for the night, Chloe took on extra shifts at her weekend diner job, saving every spare dollar. She bought a vintage, sweeping emerald green gown from a consignment shop downtown. It wasn't designer, but after hours of careful alterations on her mother's old sewing machine, it fit her like a glove. The night of the prom arrived heavy with the humid promise of a spring thunderstorm. Tyler picked Chloe up in his sleek silver Porsche. He looked undeniably handsome in his tailored tuxedo, handing her a corsage of white orchids. He told her she looked beautiful, and for a fleeting moment, Chloe let herself believe that the cruelty of high school was finally behind her. "We're making a quick stop before we head to the venue," Tyler said smoothly, turning the steering wheel onto a private gated road. "A few of the guys are taking pre-prom photos at the country club. Just a quick in and out." Chloe's stomach tightened. The Oak Ridge Country Club was Harper's territory, but Tyler squeezed her hand reassuringly, and she swallowed her anxiety. When they arrived in the opulent chandelier-lit foyer of the club, a crowd of about 30 seniors was already gathered, holding crystal glasses of sparkling cider. The moment Chloe stepped inside, the chatter stopped. Harper Bennett stood at the top of the grand marble staircase, wearing a custom crimson gown that looked like spilled blood. A wicked, triumphant smile curled on her lips. She descended the stairs slowly, her eyes locked entirely on Chloe. "Tyler, darling," Harper purred, not even looking at him. "You actually pulled it off." Before Chloe could process the words, Tyler stepped away from her, his warm demeanor evaporating into a cold, practiced smirk. He walked straight over to Harper, wrapping his arm around her waist. "A bet is a bet," Tyler announced to the echoing room. $50 grand to the graduation trip fund, just like we agreed. I brought the charity case." The room erupted into laughter. It was a sharp, jagged sound that seemed to pierce right through Chloe's chest. Her vision blurred, but she couldn't move. Her feet were rooted to the imported marble. "Oh, don't cry, Chloe," Harper mocked, stepping closer. "You didn't really think Tyler Hayes would take the girl who smells like deep fryer grease to the senior prom, did you? but we wouldn't want you to feel completely left out. We even got you a custom designer dress." Harper snapped her fingers. One of her lackeys stepped forward, holding a crumpled, heavy-duty black industrial trash bag. Harper snatched it and violently thrust it against Chloe's chest. "Put it on," Harper hissed, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper, meant only for Chloe. "You're trash, Chloe. You always have been. Put it on, or I swear to God my father will have your mother's bakery lease terminated by Monday morning. I've already drawn up the papers." Chloe's heart stopped. Her mother's bakery was barely surviving. Eviction would ruin them completely. Tears spilling over her eyelashes, destroying her cheap makeup, Chloe's trembling fingers took the plastic bag. With the entire senior class filming on their phones, laughing and jeering, Chloe was forced to pull the thick, humiliating plastic bag over her beautiful emerald gown, ripping armholes through the tough material. It was degrading, suffocating, and utterly devastating. When the plastic was settled over her shoulders, Harper laughed one final echoing time. "Perfect. Now get out of my sight." Blind with tears, Chloe turned and fled through the heavy glass doors of the country club, running out into the unforgiving, pouring rain. The storm had broken, just as Chloe hit the asphalt. Rain lashed against her face, plastering her hair to her cheeks and drumming a hollow, mocking rhythm against the thick plastic of the trash bag. She ran until her lungs burned her silver thrift store heels, snapping on the uneven pavement, forcing her to kick them off and run barefoot through the icy puddles. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew she had to escape the suffocating laughter echoing in her ears. She collapsed on a wrought-iron bench beneath the flickering amber light of a solitary street lamp, miles from the country club, and far from the brightly lit gymnasium where the prom was being held. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering violently. The emerald dress beneath the plastic was soaked and ruined the green dye, bleeding into the muddy water at her feet. She buried her face in her hands, her sobs lost to the thunder. She was so consumed by her grief that she didn't hear the approaching engine. It wasn't the loud, aggressive roar of a sports car, but a low, dangerous purr that vibrated through the soles of her bare feet. A sleek, jet-black Maybach Landaulet glided to a halt at the edge of the curb. The tinted windows were impenetrable, making the vehicle look like a shadow that had somehow solidified into steel and glass. For a moment, Chloe stopped crying, a jolt of pure, primal fear cutting through her despair. The rear passenger door swung open seamlessly. A man stepped out into the torrential rain, yet the water seemed to actively avoid him, his broad shoulders remaining impeccably dry. He was tall, impossibly, so dressed in a bespoke midnight blue suit that practically swallowed the ambient light. As he stepped into the glow of the street lamp, Chloe's breath hitched. He was breathtaking, possessing a severe aristocratic beauty that felt distinctly out of place in the modern world. His cheekbones were sharp enough to cut glass, his skin a flawless pale marble, and his eyes were the color of ancient frozen amber. This was Alistair Croft, the reclusive billionaire CEO of Croft Industries, a man whispered about in the highest echelons of global finance. He was a phantom, a myth who bought out entire corporations with a single phone call and never gave public interviews. But he was something else too, something far older and infinitely more dangerous. Alistair was the reigning king of the North American vampire court, a predator who had walked the earth since the reign of the Tudor kings. Alistair's amber eyes locked onto Chloe's trembling form. He didn't look at her with pity. He looked at her with a quiet, terrifying intensity. He stepped closer, the sheer force of his presence silencing the very wind around them. "Chloe Evans." His voice was a dark, rich velvet that sent a shiver down her spine, entirely unrelated to the cold. It was a voice that commanded empires. "How do you know my name?" Chloe stammered, pulling the plastic bag tighter around herself, painfully aware of how pathetic she looked. "I know many things," Alistair said, stopping just a foot away from her. "I know that exactly 73 years ago, your great-grandmother offered shelter to a man bleeding out in the snow behind her tavern. She hid him from the mob, hunting him, asking nothing in return. She saved my life." Chloe stared up at him, her mind struggling to process his words. 73 years ago, that's impossible. You look like you're 30. Alistair offered a faint, chilling smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I assure you, I am much older than that. A blood debt was sworn to your bloodline that night. I have kept watch over your family from the shadows ever since. I have watched your quiet strength, your resilience, and I have watched what those insignificant, privileged children just did to you." His gaze dropped to the black trash bag clinging to her wet frame. The amber in his eyes darkened to a deep predatory red. The temperature in the air plummeted frost, instantly forming on the edges of the iron bench. "They meant to break you tonight," Alistair murmured, reaching out. His gloved hand gently brushed a wet strand of hair from her cheek. His touch was freezing, yet it sent a jolt of electric warmth straight to her heart. "They meant to cast you into the dirt, but they have severely miscalculated." "There's nothing I can do," Chloe whispered, fresh tears threatening to fall. "If I fight back, they'll destroy my mother's business. Harper has the power." "Harper Bennett has the illusion of power," Alistair corrected his voice, dripping with ancient disdain. "Her father's political career is financed by my shell corporations. He is a pawn on a board he cannot even see. They wanted to make a spectacle of you, Chloe. Then we shall give them a spectacle." Alistair shrugged off his massive, heavy, silk-lined overcoat. With a fluid, graceful motion, he knelt before her. He gripped the collar of the trash bag and with a terrifyingly effortless pull, tore the thick industrial plastic entirely in half, casting the ruined pieces onto the wet pavement. Before Chloe could react to the cold, Alistair wrapped his magnificent overcoat around her shoulders. The garment was impossibly warm, smelling of cedar-expensive cologne and a metallic hint of ozone. He fastened it at her collar with a heavy, glittering ruby brooch he produced from his pocket. The coat draped over her ruined dress like a regal midnight gown. "Stand up, Chloe," Alistair commanded softly. She obeyed, feeling a strange, intoxicating courage seeping into her veins from the sheer proximity of him. "You are under the protection of the House of Croft," Alistair declared, offering her his arm. The rain had completely stopped, around them held back by an invisible pressure. "Tonight you do not walk into that gymnasium as a victim. You walk in as a queen. Shall we?" Chloe looked at the flawless, terrifying immortal standing before her, and for the first time all night, she smiled. She slipped her hand into the crook of his arm. "Let's go to prom." The drive back to Oak Ridge Academy was a blur of rain-slicked neon and the absolute suffocating luxury of the Maybach. Chloe sat in the plush leather seat, enveloped in the massive, heavy, silk-lined overcoat that belonged to Alistair Croft. The ruined, dye-bled emerald dress beneath it felt like a distant memory, replaced by the sheer, terrifying weight of the garment she now wore. Alistair sat across from her, a portrait of lethal composure. He had made one brief phone call in a language Chloe couldn't identify. It sounded like a harsh, ancient dialect of Latin before turning his amber eyes back to her. He reached into a hidden compartment between the seats and produced a long, flat velvet box. "The coat is a statement, but you require armor, Chloe," Alistair said softly, opening the lid. Inside, resting on black satin, was a breathtaking, blindingly brilliant diamond collar. This piece was crafted by Jacques Cartier himself in 1928, for a duchess who understood the art of war. "It belongs on you tonight." Chloe gasped, as his cold, gloved fingers deftly fastened the heavy platinum and diamond necklace around her throat, letting it rest perfectly against the collar of the oversized midnight blue coat. The contrast was stunning. She looked less like a high school student and more like a deposed monarch returning to claim her stolen throne. When the Maybach pulled up to the entrance of the Oak Ridge Academy gymnasium, the storm outside was still raging, but the chaos inside the car was non-existent. A uniformed driver, his eyes completely hidden by dark glasses, despite the night hour, opened the door, holding a massive black umbrella. Alistair stepped out, first extending a hand to Chloe. The moment her bare foot, she had abandoned her cheap heels in the street, touched the red carpet leading into the venue, a wave of unnatural freezing air swept through the double doors preceding them like a herald. Inside the gymnasium had been transformed into a lavish faux Versailles garden. A 12-piece orchestra was playing a modern pop song disguised as a waltz. The dance floor was packed with the airs of Connecticut's elite, dripping in designer silk and imported pearls. On the raised stage at the far end of the room, Principal Higgins was standing at a microphone, holding the glittering plastic crowns for Prom King and Queen. Tyler Hayes and Harper Bennett were standing right beside him, grinning triumphantly at the cheering crowd. Harper was basking in the adoration, her crimson gown catching the harsh spotlight. Then the heavy oak doors of the gymnasium slammed open with a concussive boom that rattled the bleachers. The orchestra abruptly stopped playing. The cheerful chatter of 300 teenagers died instantly, replaced by a suffocating, terrified silence. The sheer predatory aura radiating from the entrance was a physical weight pressing down on everyone in the room. Chloe stood in the doorway, barefoot, draped in the billionaire's sweeping overcoat, the blinding Cartier diamonds catching the stage lights. But it was the man beside her that stole the breath from the room. Alistair Croft looked like a dark god carved from ice and shadow. He rested his hand casually on the small of Chloe's back, guiding her forward. The crowd parted violently. No one dared to breathe, let alone speak, as the pair walked slowly down the center of the gymnasium. The students backed away their primal instincts, screaming at them to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the man with the ancient amber eyes. Tyler's confident smirk vanished, replaced by a pale, sickening dread. He took a subconscious step backward on the stage. Harper, however, was too poisoned by her own arrogance to recognize the danger. As Chloe and Alistair reached the base of the stage, Harper grabbed the microphone from the trembling principal. "Is this a joke?" Harper's voice echoed shrilly through the silent room. She pointed a manicured finger at Chloe. "I told you to leave, you pathetic little rat. Who the hell is this? Did you hire an actor to play your sugar daddy?" The temperature in the gymnasium plummeted another 10 degrees. The punch bowl on the refreshment table audibly cracked the pink liquid, instantly freezing solid. Alistair didn't shout. He didn't need to. When he spoke, his dark velvet voice carried to every corner of the massive room without a microphone. "You are Harper Bennett." Alistair stated the word, sounding like a death sentence. "Daughter of Senator Thomas Bennett, a man who currently possesses exactly $14 million in undisclosed illegal campaign funds resting in a numbered account at the Banque Privée Edmond de Rothschild in Geneva." Harper's face drained of all color. The microphone slipped from her hand, hitting the stage with a deafening screech of feedback. Tyler looked at her in horror, realizing the magnitude of the man standing before them. "Your father's entire political existence." Alistair continued, stepping up onto the first stair of the stage, his eyes locking onto Harper with terrifying intensity. "Is financed by the Carlyle Group, which is in turn heavily subsidized by Croft Industries. My company." A collective gasp rippled through the wealthy crowd. Every student present knew the name, Croft Industries. It was the apex predator of the financial world. "I bought this academy 20 minutes ago while sitting in traffic," Alistair said smoothly, not breaking eye contact with the trembling girl. I have just terminated the lease of every Bennett family business property in the state, and by tomorrow morning, the federal authorities will receive the encrypted ledgers of your father's offshore accounts. Your reign of cruelty ends tonight, little girl. You are nothing." Harper collapsed to her knees on the stage, the crimson fabric of her dress pooling around her as she began to hyperventilate. Tyler tried to run, slipping away toward the back exit, but Alistair's gaze flicked to him for a fraction of a second. Tyler suddenly tripped over his own feet, crashing hard into the wooden floorboards, gripping his chest as an unnatural freezing pressure paralyzed his lungs. Alistair turned his back on them, dismissing them entirely as if they were nothing more than insects. He extended his gloved hand to Chloe, his amber eyes softening into something resembling reverence. "The music seems to have stopped," Alistair murmured. "But I believe they owe you a dance, my queen." As if compelled by an invisible, terrifying force, the pale, sweating conductor of the orchestra practically leapt onto his wooden podium. With a violently trembling baton, he signaled the terrified teenage musicians. A haunting, sweeping waltz filled the freezing gymnasium, the strings vibrating with a desperate, frantic energy. No one else dared to step onto the polished dance floor. The hundreds of students, the chaperones, and the faculty remained pressed hard against the bleachers, watching in absolute awestruck silence as the nightmare unfolded before them. Chloe placed her small, warm hand into Alistair's cold, leather-clad palm. He pulled her close, his other hand resting firmly on the small of her back, the pressure grounding her through the thick, luxurious silk of his midnight blue overcoat. Despite the massive difference in their height, and the fact that she was entirely barefoot on the hard wooden floor, he guided her with such flawless, supernatural grace that she felt as though she were floating above the ground. They moved across the room in a dizzying, perfect spiral, the heavy Cartier diamonds at her throat catching the harsh gymnasium spotlights and scattering them into a million glittering shards. "You didn't just come here because of a 73-year-old blood debt, did you, Alistair?" Chloe whispered, her voice barely audible over the swelling violins. She stared up into his flawless, terrifying face. The adrenaline of the humiliation was finally wearing off, leaving behind a sharp, crystalline clarity. She was dancing with a literal monster, a creature out of gothic nightmares, yet she had never felt safer in her entire miserable life. Alistair's pale lips curved into a very faint, dangerous smile that showcased the subtle, razor-sharp points of his incisors. "You are remarkably perceptive, Chloe. No, the debt is real, and my vow to protect your bloodline is an absolute mandate I have upheld for decades. But tonight's cruel prank was not merely the organic work of spoiled, petty children." Chloe missed a step, her bare foot faltering, but Alistair's iron grip kept her perfectly on tempo, smoothly lifting her through the turn. "What do you mean Harper orchestrated the whole thing? She's hated me since freshman year. Harper Bennett is a vapid, easily manipulated pawn," Alistair murmured, his voice, a low, mesmerizing hum that vibrated directly against her chest, warming her, despite the freezing air he projected. "For weeks, an ancient rival faction, the Bathory Syndicate, has been actively trying to lure you out of the protective ancient wards I had secretly placed around your apartment building and this school. They could not touch you where you slept, nor where you studied, so they planted the seeds of this elaborate humiliation into Tyler's weak, easily corrupted mind." Chloe gasped, her eyes widening. "They used Tyler. They whispered in his dreams, amplifying his vanity and her jealousy." Alistair explained, his amber eyes glowing faintly in the dimming lights of the dance floor. "They knew Harper would inevitably escalate the cruelty to a public spectacle. They wanted you cast out into the dark completely alone, emotionally broken, and running blind through the streets. They were waiting for you in the shadows of the storm, Chloe. They needed you isolated." Chloe's mind spun, struggling to anchor itself. The absolute absurdity of high school hierarchy paled instantly in comparison to the hidden, lethal world she had just been violently dragged into. Waiting for me. Why I'm a nobody. I'm just a poor girl who smells like deep fryer grease. You are the last living descendant of the Arcanum bloodline. Alistair stated the reverence in his tone unmistakable. Your blood possesses a microscopic genetic anomaly, a total immunity to vampire compulsion and mind magic. In the hands of my enemies, you could be brutally synthesized into a biological weapon capable of wiping out my entire court, or forced to breed an army of mortal hunters who could not be stopped. The Bathory Syndicate intended to abduct you tonight and lock you in a subterranean laboratory for the rest of your natural life. A sickening chill entirely separate from Alistair's icy aura washed over her. But you found me first. I will always find you, Alistair said, his grip tightening fractionally. A flash of genuine, terrifyingly possessive fury bled through his aristocratic calm, making the gymnasium lights flicker overhead. When my intelligence network realized what they had orchestrated, I personally intercepted the Bathory strike team, waiting 3 blocks from the country club. 6 heavily armed immortal mercenaries. Their severed heads are currently washing away in the storm drains, and their ashes are fertilizing the pristine lawns of your classmates. Then I came to collect my queen. The waltz reached a massive, sweeping crescendo. Alistair spun Chloe effortlessly, the heavy midnight coat flaring out around her, like the leathery wings of a dark, avenging angel. Your life as you knew it ended the moment they forced that plastic bag over your head. Chloe! Alistair told her, his voice devoid of any coddling pity, offering only the cold, unbreakable truth. You can never return to the mundane world. You are marked. If you leave my side, the Syndicate will send another team, and another, until they have you. So what am I supposed to do? Chloe asked, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Am I your prisoner now? Alistair abruptly stopped dancing. The orchestra squeaked to a terrified halt. He reached up gently, tracing the soft line of her jaw with his freezing, leather-clad thumb. You are not a prisoner, Chloe. You are the North American court's most heavily guarded treasure, Alistair said softly, his voice carrying a weight that felt like centuries of absolute authority. I offer you a throne. I offer you the unyielding power to crush anyone who has ever looked down on you, who ever made you feel small. Walk out of these doors with me tonight, and you will never know fear, poverty, or human cruelty ever again. You will reign in the dark. Chloe slowly turned her head, looking past Alistair's broad shoulder. She saw Harper Bennett still sobbing hysterically on the stage, a ruined, pathetic mess in her crimson gown. She saw Tyler Hayes cowering against a brick wall, clutching his chest in sheer terror. She looked at the hundreds of wealthy, privileged students who had laughed at her misery just an hour ago. They were now staring at her with absolute, unadulterated fear and trembling respect. The trash bag they had used to humiliate her had actually been her cocoon. She looked back up at the flawless, terrifying immortal holding her hand, and she felt an incredible, intoxicating surge of dark, delicious power ignite in her veins. Take me home, Alistair. Chloe whispered, a slow, dangerous smile finally touching her lips. Alistair's amber eyes flared with fierce, triumphant satisfaction. He offered her his arm once more. Without a single backward glance at the shattered, pathetic elite of Oak Ridge Academy, Chloe Evans walked out of the gymnasium, stepping forever out of the blinding lights of her tragic past, and willingly vanished into the beautiful, unending dark. If you loved this story about Chloe's ultimate revenge and her dark, romantic twist of fate with the Vampire King, hit that like button. Right now, don't forget to share this video with your friends who love a good high school payback story, and subscribe to our channel for more insane, dramatic and supernatural romance tales every single week. Ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. See you in the next video.